remember, who are the children or what is the school that gave us the fabulous little,
Pacific Christian, I think.
what's it called?
I think it's Pacific Christian.
I'd like to do something to thank them, but I want to make sure I'm thanking the right children or school.
The lady knows Erin. I can't remember her name, but she was really sweet.
Tess
Yes,
Kelly. Yeah.
that'd be easy enough to hunt down.
Okay, are we ready? You ready, Deb? All right, let's convene this meeting of the board briefing at 2 p.m. on February 28th, 2024. We will jump right in with the BOCC travel budget and Isabel Gilda, the incomparable, amazing, irreplaceable
badge.
Isabel Gilda.
Thank you so much,
You're
commissioners. So before you, we're going to discuss today, Rachel and I are finishing up the budgets for next fiscal year. Yeah, most of them. And we thought we'd revisit the commissioner's travel budget, because I know that last year travel budget got cut, for lack of a better word, it got adjusted. And so that made that some of the travel that we'd forecasted didn't take place. And so the first sheet you have is just a little history on the travel budget from fiscal year 21-22, 22-23, and then this year. You'll see that what we budgeted and then what we actually spent for 21-22 was underspent, because that's where we're still in COVID at that time. And I didn't use fiscal year 20. I didn't go back any further to 2019-20, because it was impacted by COVID. So the spent to date wouldn't be indicative of what the plans were. So if you look at this year, our budget request was 46,000. It was adjusted, and we landed on 30,600. And of that, was spent 26,000. And so, again, because of the adjustment, that we wouldn't normally be this far spent, 26,000 on a $30,000 budget. So that's to explain that. And then for the last 3 years,
we have $4,000 left, is what you're saying.
for the rest of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Yep. Probably just slightly over that.
Okay.
And in the travel budget on the next spreadsheet, I've broken up the travel into 3 sections rather than just lumping it all together. So the top section is the conferences, and then the middle section, which is more broken down, is all the miscellaneous meetings, that part of the liaison responsibilities that the commissioners attend, and then at the very bottom there's miscellaneous mileage, and that hopes to capture what's not in the above section. Any unexpected meetings or meetings that weren't planned or on our radar would hopefully fall under that. So the last 3 years we've budgeted $500 per commissioner, and that translates into roughly 750 miscellaneous miles per year. And Erin and I did a little exercise, which was really helpful to break all this down. We looked at her
I appreciate that so much. I know you had to go back and look at paper forms, but it's just helpful to give
And
it
it wasn't,
some-
and I had to go back and look at Commissioner Yamamoto's travel also, to see where his travel is going to be distributed
traveled a lot.
moving forward.
Isn't
But
that
with
about?
Yeah, he traveled a lot.
Erin's, we got to see where her mileage was actually broken in. And I have copies of the spreadsheet if anybody is interested, but it's just another set of numbers to look at.
Help him stay awake.
Who's going where?
I mean, what we did, and the result was kind of interesting.
Send one to David.
Was,
You want one, Sean? Okay, Sean wants one.
I have it if you need it. Was that we got to see in Commissioner Scar's first year was a lot more miscellaneous mileage. That's pretty typical, I think, for a first-year commissioner to be traveling more to different meetings. And the second year showed her travel was a lot more focused, and which correlates to the projected spreadsheet on the other page.
This is just Erin's. Is that okay?
Yep. And so for 2022, the miscellaneous number of miles was 680 miles for Commissioner Scar. And so that kind of ties just slightly under the 750 that we budgeted. And then in the second year for 23, and that takes us up to the end of the year, up to 23, there was a lot less, like a third of the miscellaneous mileage. Again, you can look under the columns that we can see where her travel was spent, and there was more AOC meetings
Right.
and COPAC and ODF. And so hopefully that provides this little snapshot into the first year commissioner,
Yeah.
then a second year commissioner, and I'm sure this year will probably follow along with the 2023 pattern, I imagine, but
Probably.
it's
Yeah.
not easy to predict exactly. So with that said, I feel comfortable. I guess maybe I should say we'll go from the top to bottom on the forecast sheet, and then that'll make more sense. I'll jump a little bit back to the conference and tie into the miscellaneous mileage at the end, at the bottom. So these are the conferences that have been in our travel budget for the last couple of years. Let's say, I would say 4 years. So the NACO annual conference, Commissioner Yamamoto typically attended that. And from what I understood, no one's going to be attending it this year. And that was one that was in our
Depend
budget,
on
but
what they might have for broadband. The one in, talking about July in Tampa or wherever it is.
yeah, I had broadband.
If they had a big thing, I might be interested in that one this year, but, not the others.
I had that in a different section, so we can get to the broadband, because Commissioner Yamamoto did attend those.
I think he's saying
No,
at the
talking-
annual
at-
conference.
yeah, I'm talking at the
if
annual.
Oh,
they have a
sorry.
broadband track, he would wanna go.
Okay. So that would be in July.
Of
again,
the
we only
next
have-
fiscal year, it'd be July 24, 25, right?
Yeah.
So this is to get into the budget that we
Right.
put for
Un-
24.
So, yeah.
Understand, yeah.
So maybe we should put one in there and then see what we need to do to move around.
Okay.
Because we do have all three currently budgeted, plus Rachel, I think, for the NACO ledge, which this year I was the only one that went. So I don't know if we want to rotate that or something.
And I don't know if I should go if all three are going, so we can talk about that.
Yeah, I think when I look at this just as an overall, I know we're going line by line, Isabel, but that's one of the spaces, for example, that I'm like, that's probably one where we can be thoughtful.
Okay. So for the NACO annual conference is in Florida this year in July. And the way our fiscal year works, the expenses fall into this fiscal year.
Oh, because you do it up front. You
Yeah.
pay ahead of
So
time.
that was the one we thought no one was going to attend, but we'll look at the agenda and see what's on the agenda, then we can,
Is that what we?
I don't,
It wasn't a week or so ago when I checked. I
Okay.
have no idea what's there now.
I think they have a placeholder. That's where I got this information from Florida. They have some information on their website, but not a full agenda, but I'll look at that.
But maybe what that should say then is 25.
Right. So 23, I'm just confirming nobody, because the expenses, even if it's for next year, we'll have to include it next year also.
Correct, so for the budget we're submitting for 24, 25, that line should say 25. Because you're saying it would come out of next year's budget for not the Florida, but the next location.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we're saying NACO annual conference 25.
When's this budget one? We just don't know.
Because we don't know, because we could have
Yeah.
one or two new commissioners and there could be a real desire to go to that. So I think I think there's a larger philosophical piece probably inside this around.
Do we take turns?
Do we
or-
take
yeah.
turns or does everybody get to choose one conference a year or, you know?
When in 2019, when I came on, you told me that we took turns, at least with NACO.
Right.
So,
And I think that's
and
just
then
when we
kinda got away
started.
from that.
That was a conversation when we, I think Commissioner Yamamoto was the first one to attend it, and he'd only been attending it, and then we started that conversation, well, maybe we should alternate. Yeah.
And I would say, given tight budgets, probably alternating is a good idea
Yeah.
to go back to.
Yeah, I think so.
And so
Yeah.
I think, as we each think about where would we really most like to go?
Yeah. And we can think about, we can look at the numbers for, should we have two commissioners go one year and the other commissioner and Rachel go the next year? Like, can we afford two per year or,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. And the same from the WIR conference, that should say 24, 25, but the 24 one still is to come, that's in May, and that was part of our last fiscal year budget, so, and the only commissioner that attended the WIR was Commissioner Yamamoto. I don't think you attended the WIR. Yeah. So I don't know for next year.
You know, I don't know, WIR, you know, has very specific pieces within it, and I think to Doug's point, the challenge for us to decide sitting today is we don't know where they're gonna focus on an agenda item that's
Right.
important to us. It's almost for budgeting purposes, it seems that a conference typically runs us about, if we were to average it, 3,500 for a far away. Obviously, the AOC local one in Eugene, I would advocate for us all to attend. I think that's an important one for us to all attend. But I would potentially advocate 3,500 per commissioner to attend one additional conference and maybe recognize that choosing them today is pretty difficult.
Right.
I don't know.
So 3,500 for WIR.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I'm thinking is if there are 3 commissioners, there's 3,500 set aside for each commissioner for travel to a conference, which they can choose during the year that would be in addition to the AOC
Yeah,
regular conference.
Yeah. I'm just confirming that's what you were saying.
Yeah, because I don't know whether to put it in WIR or whether to put it in Florida or whether to leave it in DC, but my concept is 3,500 per commissioner, choose which conference you want. I don't know what others think.
Yeah, in general, I think that's fine.
I realize that
an
messes up your
additional-
sheet.
An additional, it's okay, additional 3,500 per commissioner?
Not in
Not
addition to what
additional.
you have here.
Mm-mm.
Rather than having us choose which conference today, just having a conference line item that had 3,500 per commissioner plus the 1,750 per commissioner for AOC in it. And then I think county college, you probably do have to budget for in the event that you may get 2 commissioners.
Yeah,
And
I
they
thought
might
we
both
did
need to
too.
go.
This looks like just one.
Where are we? When you're sorry, where are we?
Sorry, Isabel, we've completely taken over what you were trying to do.
So for your approach, Aaron, that's just talking about basically the top 3 NACO.
Yes,
So you're suggesting 3,500, just a flat, we have 3 commissioners, there's 3 NACO conferences, 111.
yes,
So the first 3 conferences, 3,500 per line. And
And then
everything else is, we're either doing it or it's a one-off.
right.
Okay.
Everybody can choose a NACO. And if somebody doesn't want to, they could choose something else, but.
But what about Rachel?
So let's talk about Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see ICMA,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what that is.
That's the International City County Managers Association. It's
Okay.
in fall. I've done it at the last.
And
So that's been my primary one that I like to go to. And then the NACO ones are also nice to go to, but I feel my personal opinion on that is I would put ICMA first if I had to pick. If it makes sense for whatever reason for me to also go to NACO, or if nobody can go and I'm the one going, if one's already going or two's already going, I don't think I need to go. Like that just seems like a lot.
So then we would budget for Rachel to go to ICMA. And then as we approach each conference, we'll, you know, work with who's going. And if
Yeah.
there are no commissioners able to go and we feel like Tillamook should be represented, Rachel might be in place of that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Commissioner Bauer? Is that getting too tight?
Well, I think what we're talking about essentially is $5,000 travel and training for each of us, including Rachel. So rather than the 200 at the bottom there, that could be 20,000. And we decide, you know, we can spend up to 5,000 with that budget. Or it could be 5,200 if you know, NACO is 35 and AOC is 17. But basically, like, you know, this is what's what you what you have to spend this year and figure out where you want to spend it, or, don't spend it.
Right.
Am I making sense? If we said that each of us had $5,000 per year that we could spend and decide which conferences we're going to, or 5,200 maybe. And-
Yeah, because the 1750
Yeah.
for annual plus.
5,250. Each of us had 5,250
For each
times 4,
commissioner.
each commissioner and Rachel, times 4. And we can decide of this list, we can decide, or whatever else that isn't on this list, what do we want to go to? What's a priority for us? And we can spend up to that amount or not spend it. But we'd have to have some special process if we're going to go over.
And that includes AOC, ledge retreat.
It
the
does-
fairs, that includes everything.
I think so.
Okay.
So, yeah, so like,
Because we don't
County-
we
except
don't
for
all
county
need to,
college, probably.
right,
We should take that.
yes,
I was
yeah,
gonna
you're
say,
right.
it doesn't
Yeah.
include the county college
Yeah.
and for me, if I was going to, which I'm on the board of Ledge, so I will be going to Ledge Retreat, that's something that I need to do. But I paid for it myself last year because of the concerns about budget, so
Oh,
if
that
that's
was
how
nice
this
of you.
falls, then that's how it falls.
I
But
didn't know that. That was nice of you.
I just figured with the budget conversations we'd had, that was an optional one for me at that time. So, I mean, we're skinning it down pretty skinny, I will acknowledge that. But I think that that's what this budget year is gonna require of us.
Yeah, I was in a budget conversation with the sheriff's office recently when we were talking about travel and training because a lot of sheriff's office personnel have required training. They don't have the option, they have to go.
Yep.
And Karen Crunoff said, well, what about if we ask people to share rooms? And I thought, that was kind of a cringy thought for everybody. But on the other hand, it's makes sense. Like, what if we're really in a tight budget year, we could suggest like, you could share a room or you could take turns. There are definitely ways that we could make this tighter than it has been.
Yeah, share a room's a tough one.
I know, people are
Yeah.
cringy about it, but
I've seen it though.
yes.
Oh, we did it
I have
nonprofit all the
too.
time. You
I
never
have
got
too.
your own room.
Yeah.
If you went anywhere with Karen, there were more than one person going, you did not get your own room.
Yeah.
That was just a given, but.
I've seen Sarah Hampshire and
Mhm.
whoever was
Yeah.
going with her
Yeah,
buddy up,
yeah.
which, I don't know, and that's up for
Yeah.
you guys.
I'm just saying there are ways for us to be more, to spend less for sure, or not go.
Yeah, I would say from a morale perspective, that one's probably gonna have a sharp feedback. So something for us to think about in that.
It'll be
in that
hard for
frame.
Doug. Sorry.
That's right.
Yes.
Doug always gets his own room. So,
I'm pretty
Okay.
easygoing, I can live with almost anything.
Okay.
That I don't know.
so the 35 plus the 1750 would be the most expensive NACO plus the AOC annual. So is that where you were getting the 5250?
Mhm. So 5,250 times 4 plus county college times 2.
County College times 2. And then there's also BOC staff and county council at the AOC conference.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that's for coming down so I think
Well,
we
true,
want to
yeah.
add that one.
Yeah,
Make sure
yeah.
we don't pull that one out.
I agree.
So then the tribal relations.
We can't do it without these guys.
Tribal relations training, that would be for you to choose which one you wanted.
Right, I said I wanted to go to that one this year because I wasn't going to NACO.
Okay, got it.
If we're gonna do kind of a flat average instead of specific cost per conference, you might wanna put some. For example, and so.
Mhm. That's true.
How does that work out?
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Just kind of a
Yeah.
flat bottom addition.
so 6,000 times the 4 people plus the others, still gives us a decent cut, but maybe gives us enough
Mhm.
in it
Mhm.
instead of 50. 250.
How much?
I know for Isabel.
What if it was, how much contingency are you thinking?
Oh, I was just thinking, I'm just looking at Isabel has 37, I'm just pulling this out, not because it's mine, but because it's just over the 3,500. So the ICMA is 3,700. If I have 3,500,
Mhm.
it's not going to be that.
Yeah,
And so
gotcha.
we know it's gonna be over. And so if there's mean, we're not talking about a lot of conferences here. If they all end up being over a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't know, 3 to
Yeah.
5,000 for
Yeah.
everybody
Mm-hmm.
to have a little bit of cushion, so we're not
Mm-hmm. Okay,
dealing with the contingency
sure.
situation.
Okay.
So, where did we land as far as,
We might have
Hold on.
landed on, if we kept it at 5250, then adding 3 to 5,000 for contingency total? I think that's what Rachel
So
just
it's
said.
5250 times 4.
Four.
That's just a whole line item budget for the 4 of us to go to one conference. There's another 5 contingency to allow for travel overages as you're booking each of those. County college stays. And the AOC conference stays.
the AOC,
The 2 AOC conferences, not the annual conference stays.
But not
I
the
thought that
liturgy.
was included in the 5250.
It was.
I'll stop talking. I thought it was a separate conference. Never mind.
Well, the 5250 was like NACO plus
Oh, right,
AOC.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right, minus the contingency.
But I bet we just ended up at about where we started.
Back up at 33,200.
Yeah, I bet we did.
Well, and if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. And that's where we start with our budget. And if through the budget process, we have to make additional changes, we have to make additional changes. Because that's certainly what we're asking our other department heads to do, is to put their budget forward with a preparation to make change if needed, but not starting at change, right? So there is that for us to do as well. We already did take a pretty good slice out of it last year. And if we're at 30 now, what would be different from this year? Because only one of us went to NACO. I don't know what else is in that.
I didn't even go to the AOC conference last year. Now I
So
can't even
with the
remember why.
5250 times 4 plus to say 5,000
Mhm.
for overage, that's 26,000.
Plus 4 for 2 people to go to county college, which presumably it'll be 1, but we could budget. So there's 30, so we're almost back to where we started.
Budget for it so you don't shoot me in the foot.
So 4 for county college.
You know, Murphy's Law.
Right.
And the legislative retreat, will be in your 5250.
I will have to fit it in my 5250 or I'll have to pay for it myself, is what I'm hearing, so.
And then I put the Oregon Fairs Association, I think you went once or twice, but I wasn't
Oh,
really
yeah.
sure whether that,
I think if Doug has a chance, he should go for sure. Yeah. I don't remember when it is.
What, is that on here,
It
Sheriff?
says October.
Yeah, it says October, it says 800.
and that'll be part of the contingency, or is that,
Well, he won't be going to NACO, right?
Well, he hasn't decided yet.
Okay.
right?
The contingency concept is for overages for.
Parking or,
5250,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Or if the fees go up or the hotels are more expensive or something like that?
Yeah.
So I'd say it's approximately 31,000.
So right about where we started. So do we leave it where we started? And again, know that if we have to cut something, there's not a lot of, not a lot there if we're all gonna get a conference, but.
I think philosophically, it's a good idea for us to just think about prioritizing, you know?
Mhm.
I'm not saying any of us are gadabouts, but to think like, hey, what are the things that are most important to me this year? I think that's fair.
Like I was just suggesting at 3320, we still had to do that. There's not much on there, but yeah.
Yeah, I would also add that you are the commissioners, and commissioners are going to change. And if a commissioner wants to go to a conference, they're going to go to a conference. And so we need to go through this exercise. But I mean, just like happened with the last budget, it was cut kind of arbitrarily, but there was still a desire to go to conferences, and it still happened. So I think it's a good starting point, but I think it's very likely that it's going to get exceeded regardless.
Okay.
There's stuff that happens, and the commissioners are going to change, and
Yeah,
all that
things that you need to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Isabel, now that we blew that all up, else can we do for you?
We keep
Or
track.
keep it.
So the next section is, I just captured all the meetings the commissioners had historically attended in the last 4 to 5 years, and that's what we kind of use to build the other part of the travel budget. And I try to update,
I typically go to the district meeting too.
we don't have,
For the district meeting, you just have the 3 commissioners. I typically go to that too.
And in fact, there's other leadership that goes to that. Like Sarah goes, the clerk
That's
goes,
in
the,
their budget.
okay,
Yeah, but they do.
gotcha.
Well, that's one where hopefully we could carpool. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
true.
that's another piece of this that,
Yeah,
you know, some of these that make sense if we're, more than one of us are going.
and so
Isabel, are you gonna do the NACO Leadership Academy?
I don't know, might
That's
need after
awesome, I
this.
want you to do it. I hope you do it.
So the miscellaneous meetings and trainings is just a breakdown of, again, historically what the commissioners have attended. Some things have changed, some of the meetings have transitioned to virtual.
Uh-huh, yeah, a
I
lot.
know the NOAA ones, there's only 3 in person, the rest are all virtual. And I think same for the CAP meetings.
Yeah.
But the locations do vary. Sometimes they're in Banks, sometimes
Right.
one was in Bend, so the mileage really varies on those. And the ones I had most questions, because I confirmed it, that the first set until we get to the OBAC meeting, that was a Commissioner Yamamoto, and I don't believe, and it was the last time we did the liaison meeting, anyone would be attending.
No, I believe that was a governor appointed or
That's right.
state appointed. So OBAC, none of us have been appointed to OBAC, so I think that one's currently gone.
And for the OCVMA, Commissioner Yamamoto was pretty active in that. But I don't know if that anyone,
I don't think anybody picked that one up either.
okay.
That's the coastal zone management?
Yeah, yep,
Okay, I don't think they're even meeting from what I heard.
Okay.
okay.
I could be wrong, but
And I went a couple times, it was remote when I went. There wasn't
Yeah.
even an in-person option.
that's the one that Arno Husing used to run, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I think they may have dissolved.
And it's STIA, you're still attending the
I'm
STIA
still
Commission.
attending and they still moved that one around.
The OFIC, I don't think that was a Commissioner Yamamoto, Oregon
what is that?
Forest Industries Council.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
So take that one off. And the ONC Counties meeting, Commissioner Yamamoto was pretty active in that, and that's type of meeting where it's not just mileage, it's a 2-day event, so they have to stay over, so this increased, so there's hotel fees.
And they move it around, so I went in Salem and I didn't stay over because it wasn't far enough
was
away
Salem.
from home to make sense. But they had it in Roseburg, the one before that, that he went to that I did not go to. So.
But I think
ONC
moving forward, you're still planning to,
planning to participate in ONC. It's currently got a lawsuit pending at the Supreme Court
Oh, wow,
on our behalf.
wow,
So
okay,
feels like it's still relevant.
okay.
I mean, that is the way, if there is any way to reopen Federal Harvest, it will be through the work of ONC. So it does feel like if it weren't me, it would still be an important table for us to be seated at.
Okay,
then, so I'll keep that 1,200 in there, I think,
Yeah,
okay.
please. And then again, I won't use it unless I have to, but
And then the OPAC, and again, that was Commissioner Yamamoto, Oregon. I think it was,
Ocean policy.
policy, ocean policy.
yeah.
Haven't heard anything about that one either.
I think
well,
there
this-
was, it was like the OCZMA, I think they'd not disbanded, but they weren't meeting as frequently, and they,
Well, the local one tied, which that only meets once a year for 5 minutes
yeah.
in December. This one, I could see starting back up again because of the stuff that's going on the South Coast.
The wind power stuff,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
So should I put,
If there were a meeting on that I heard about, I would go to that. Because people are starting to ask about it, and you know, they're fearful that if, with what's going on down there, eventually will come up here. And there used to be a group about 10 years ago that was formed to protect the view shed. And I think it dissolved because nothing happened and they got tired of meeting or talking about it, I
Right.
guess. But, you know, this could quickly rise to the top again if the feds do something that nobody sees coming, which is
Yeah.
entirely possible.
And I think that's the issue of our contingency, right, is that sometimes we don't know where we're gonna need to be until we need to be there.
That's right.
And if we're thoughtful about where we go, hopefully there will be enough left that, you know, when one of those emerges. And again, that's where contingency can come in, and I see Sean in the room. It's something we should be monitoring through the year to say, how are we doing on our travel budget? And do we need to, you know, be more thoughtful to try to stay in budget, or are these truly things that we need to do?
And then Oregon Broadband.
That's one, I've been to that every year in the last 4 or 5 years. It's in Ashland. They used to be in Hood River, now they're in Ashland. And it's worthwhile because basically you have the whole broadband industry in Oregon and excuse me, a number of other states as well. And it's kind of what I would call a brain dump or something, where it's really the place where it's happening statewide. And so somebody should be there, and that's been an ongoing, growing meeting. Last time in November, Senator Wyden was going to be there, but he ended up coming on the big screen and all that. But there's a lot of money and a lot of good information, and you know, Lightwave will still be in the process of trying to get its hands on more money. So you talk to somebody and walking down the hall, that's worthwhile. So somebody ought to go, whether it's me or somebody else.
I can look back and see what the estimated cost was for Commissioner Yamamoto just to go to Ashland and put some,
He went, I don't know if he went last year, but I think he went the year before.
I think he was sick last year. I feel like he was gonna
He-
go,
he-
and then
he
he
did.
got
He
sick
skipped-
and
he
he wasn't
skipped
able
last
to
year.
go.
I don't really know what the State Forest Trust of Oregon, I think that was Commissioner.
Yeah, that's
Yamamoto.
one of mine. It's a board that I sit on. That's the Recreation Education Interpretation Support for ODF.
Quarterly meetings or?
Quarterly meetings, yeah, we meet online the rest of the time.
So do you think 600 for your, or,
Yeah, probably, because that's another one they move around, but it's in Tillamook State Forest as often as it's anywhere else,
Okay.
since we have this huge forest piece of it. So the mile linkage is not much.
then the NACO Leadership Academy, Rachel had suggested I consider attending this training, but as you see, it's $2,000. Well, I think it depends on how many, the last couple of years we've received a discount.
Right?
Right.
I think it was 1,600, but that depends on how many people enroll, I think. I don't think the discount is, it's automatic, so I put in the full, it's like $19.95.
If you want to do it, I'm fully supportive of you doing it.
Okay.
It's in Kevin's budget too, to go.
Excellent.
Could you go back up to the one, the NOW, what is that?
Which one?
NOW,
That's the,
Northwest Oregon Works.
That's
oh, okay.
the
I
one you
thought
went
it was a national organization for women.
it is, yeah.
Either one would be fine.
Yeah.
You can choose, Doug.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I know what the other one is, yes, and I did go to that one,
And
or the one, the regional one here.
I believe that's on your liaison list, that, so we
Yeah.
keep you in there. Yep. And we have a seat, a voting seat at the table on that organization for Tillamook County. Okay, I think I have enough information for the first two. And then, would I need the miscellaneous mileage if I have that contingency? I could, it's like 1,900, you know, I could add that to the contingency, because it is miscellaneous. I don't know if the miscellaneous would be, what do I have?
So what is the practice for charging mileage now? So I've been over to Banks for Outback and down to Lincoln City, which is no big deal, and then I'm going up and down the coast here. And I guess I'm thinking I'm not too interested in collecting money unless I go out of the county. You know, like Banks, maybe that's, you know, $60 or whatever it is. But so what's been the practice? Does everybody charge? Not running around town, but like I think one time Commissioner Scar and I were talking, and if you go to Manzanita, you know, that's a ways up and back, and so what do we do?
I don't charge for anything. I don't think we have a policy. I don't charge for anything in the county because I feel like I represent the whole county and that's my job.
That's kind of where I'm coming from right
Yeah.
now too.
Yeah, and I don't always charge for like if out of the county, like for example, the NOAA board meetings, if they're in Warrenton, I don't charge for that because it seems nitpicky. But if I'm going further, you know, really I only end up charging a couple times a year. But I'm not regularly going to Salem, so maybe
I
if I were.
charge. So I don't charge anything right around the general central Tillamook area. If I'm going to north, I do. If I'm going to south, I do. If I'm leaving the county, I do. So, and I do. I go to Salem pretty much once a month for the AOC stuff, at least. You know, and there's two schools of thought on this. Certainly, there's many schools of thought, but two ends of the spectrum, perhaps. One is that as commissioners, we serve the whole county, we make enough money, we don't need it. And I think there's a feeling, and have been commissioners in the past, that definitely same reason they didn't take COLAs, right? They were just sort of like, I don't need it, let's not do that.
That was Tim Josie. He was
Right.
of that school of thought.
Sure. And then there, I mean, I think it's an actual realistic cost to the county because we are employees of the county doing the work of the county, and I think it needs to be reflected. If you get somebody in here who is living closer to the wire, I don't know that we're doing them favors if we set them up to say, you know, we just don't bill for mileage. So there's a balance to it, for sure. I think everybody has to do what they feel is right. I just, you know, hope that we acknowledge that mileage for commissioners, particularly if they're leaving the county, is can add up. It can be a big deal. I went to Roseburg or to Klamath Falls
For sure.
for
Yeah.
AOC, and you know,
Yeah.
they set where you're gonna go. You don't get to choose
Right.
the AOC
Well,
location.
that's kind of where I come down. If you're within the boundary of the county, as Commissioner Bell just said, we're representing everybody. We don't have districts, so I can see that you don't need an argument. In my case, living down south, you know, it's a 70-mile drive up that way, 140. But big deal, you know, I'm gonna come up here for the regular day anyway. So, but if you go to Banks or Portland or maybe even Salem over and back, that's 100 and some miles round trip. That's where I would draw the line, just for my personal side. But you're right, somebody may see this as really nitpicking, or they may say, I remember Commissioner Labhart made a point of telling people he didn't charge anybody for anything. He figured he was hired on to do the job. And you know, I can tell you what PUD's policy is. If you're within the county, you don't collect a dime. If you go to Portland or Nashville or wherever you go, then you turn in for your mileage and expenses.
So then I think the other question is it a county policy or a commissioner policy if we're to make a policy? And how do we feel about asking staff to do what we're doing, or are we separating ourselves, which we can totally do, but I think we want to be thoughtful if we're thinking about, you know, if we decide to set policy as opposed to we have practice, and in practice, each person makes their own decision.
So
Do we
let's-
have a county policy? Like,
No.
I assume that
Yeah, I mean, the
if
policy.
people are driving around the county doing their work, they're not, but maybe they're driving county vehicles.
Yeah, that's a different story. If you're using your vehicle, you can charge for mileage. I had one person who would, and I couldn't dispute it, would charge for driving from here to a meeting at Tillamook.
Oh, boy.
And the first time I got that, I'm like,
Are you
it's like I mean, it was just ridiculous, but, I mean, you can't dispute it unless we had something different, but
Yeah.
it's totally discretionary. Technically, you can charge for mileage anywhere you go if you're in your own car, but.
We have, library employees that go from the main branch to the branches, and there's a set mileage for them to get reimbursed if they have to use their personal car.
Okay.
But what I've seen come through the treasurer's office, it kind of depends on the person whether they submit for reimbursement for mileage or not.
Okay.
You know, the county, years ago, I remember, had a car reserved for the commissioners, but it was at the absolute bottom of the motor pool, and,
It was.
you know, you'd be lucky if you could make a round trip to Salem and not break down.
We had one of those, yeah. Yeah, we had one of those recently.
Oh,
We let it
really?
go.
Oh,
Yeah, for
It
good
did- it
reason.
did break down.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm hearing is there is a county policy that you can reimburse for mileage, and commissioners can make their decision if they wish to. The miscellaneous miles that are here are reflective of past practice, which is
In
Commissioners,
recent time.
in
it's-
recent time. So I guess I would recommend and suggest that we leave the miscellaneous mileage in because it reflects past practice and everybody can make their decision.
Okay,
That's my recommendation. Anybody else can
is
speak up?
the rate the IRS rate?
Yeah.
0.665
Yeah, it's the
cents,
IRS.
So
something like that.
whatever the published IRS rate, that's what we use, okay.
And then we would just meet with you monthly or bi-monthly, every other month rather, to go over your calendar and look at your mileage.
Yeah, I've only got, so while we're on that subject, if I might ask another question, what's the allowance for meals, or how does that work? I can tell you what PUD did, they used the federal Oregon zone, the feds have zones around the country, but, so they just used like the Oregon rate, so if you're out, it's breakfast is so much and so on, so how does that work at the county?
That's the same, Sean?
Per diem.
We have a rate, yeah, we
Oh,
use it per diem.
okay.
Yeah.
If it's a one day, during a regular day and you choose to have lunch, you get taxed on it if you're not reimbursed. If it's overnight, then it's not taxed.
I only submit meals if I'm at conference. If I'm traveling for the day or whatever, I never submit meals.
Well, once in a while, your meals are furnished too, depending where you're going, but.
Yep.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, for the miscellaneous meeting mileage in the center, the cream colored,
Mhm.
that's just a breakdown as to how we come to that total, which looks like we're not removing anything, we're adding Rachel to some District 7 mileage. And I'm adding Doug to the OPAC and the broadband in Ashland, so that 13,130 will increase slightly, maybe $500-600. And then we're keeping the miscellaneous mileage.
So, yeah, because it looks like I had $350 in 2022 and $150 in 2023. So if, it feels like moving pennies left to right, but we could probably reduce the miscellaneous mileage. If I'm the one that's the most common claimer of mileage, and I was at 153, it might not need to be 500 for each of us. So,
That's true.
again, we might, make it 300, assuming the price of, assuming that it may go up a little, with the reimbursement going up a little bit.
Hopefully, gas prices aren't gonna keep going up, but
It's under $4 for the first time in forever.
reduce it to 300 a person?
Yeah, 300 person, sure.
Okay, so I'll bring it down to 1,200. So I have 1,200 miscellaneous mileage. I'll have, after the adjustments in the meetings and training section, I'll probably have closer to 14,000. And then I will have the 26,000 lump sum for the commissioners. That's 5,250 times 4, plus 5,000 for the contingency. So, and then 4,000 for the county college. That's like a 30,000. Okay, so just slight adjustments in the, so the grand total is 48, so I think I would estimate that to be like 45.
we didn't cut very much. It's a good exercise, and I think if, I think it's good to think about it and talk it through and prioritize. If we needed to make additional cuts, I think we know where they could come from now.
It was a good exercise to review the meetings to make sure everybody was still attending, and then if they're not, I can take those off the list completely for next budget year. That, are there any other meetings that are not, for sure that are not on this list? Because then hopefully that will fall under the contingency if they come up as needed.
You just put $500 in TIF. That's things I forgot. And you're covered.
Gotta change our contingency to TIF.
Yeah. Okay, I think, do you have any other questions for the budget, Rachel, the travel? Okay,
Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you, Isabel.
I will put these numbers together and see where we land.
Okay, I know, we're like herding cats, it's painful.
Especially at the beginning. It's like, oh, how
I know,
many
we want to change your whole structure on how you did it.
That's okay. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next topic is compensation study review that has Erin's name on it.
It does, and I am presenting on behalf of myself and Sean and Joel, and I sent this last night. I apologize, it was right at the end of the day. If anybody didn't get a chance, oh, there you go, to get, take a look at it. Sean probably have a copy, but. So, we had, and I'll just let everybody skim it if you haven't had a chance to read it, and I won't say anything yet. Are you ready, Doug? I don't want to cut you short.
You ready, Doug?
Yes.
So I wanted to bring this back. It was quite a few weeks ago now that on January 24th, we removed the non-represented executive service and elected official pay tables from our board agenda so that we could make sure we had adequate review for them. At a board briefing, we talked about the best way to do that and agreed that when Jody came back, we would ask about best practice for that. We had talked about possibly an internal review, possibly an external review. In talking with Jody, there's not necessarily a precedent of a best practice being an outside review. So Sean and Joel and I talked about it and decided let's do an internal review and see if we can, if that feels like it can be adequate. So in doing that, I have reviewed all of the pay tables, which I received from Mary Jo in HR, discussed with Mary Jo the process she went through, discussed the matching of the job descriptions, all of those pieces, and just kind of reviewed our compensation study process to really look and make sure that there was not a place or a space in it where there could be significant questions asked about whether Jody could have put her thumb on the scale, because I think we don't think that she did, but we want to make sure from all outside appearances that it's clear that we didn't just turn HR loose and say, review your own position and make your own suggestions. So that's really where this sort of started in the board briefing, in our conversation. So in going back and reviewing the process, talking with Mary Jo, getting copies of all of the pay tables that were utilized for this. Some of the pay tables were from July of 22. In those cases, there's an email as well that backs up the COLA that was then received in 24, and that is put into the mathematics of the pay table. So I went through and reviewed all of it and find it to be that this position was done in the same way as all other positions with the same set of comparators, and that the data, which is simply hard data, is the data that's in the table, and then the mathematics in the table are correct and lead to the under market of that position. So if you wanna, that was the sheet. So Sean, do you wanna say anything more? Because I'm sorry, Joel's at the CIS conference and can't participate in this today.
Yeah, but
with us.
he and I talked.
He empowered you to speak.
And he advised Aaron that he was on the same page as you and our treasurer.
Okay.
Yeah, so after Aaron reviewed it, I reviewed every step of the process that was used, the same comparators were used for the same as everybody else. I went through all of the paperwork. I looked back through HR Annie's paperwork too to review their processes and make sure we were following any of that at the time. And it flowed just like she was reviewing Rachel's position, or she was reviewing Debbie's position, or anybody's position. Same process was used for hers.
So nothing irregular was found, and we've now had 3 sets of eyes on it. So was there anything else you wanted to say on behalf of Joel, Bill?
No, there isn't, and my own 2 cents worth, it just, I know a lot of time and effort's gone into this. As a practical matter, it seems like putting some outside eyes on it maybe is more cautionary than you really need to be. Right. So
Thank
I
you.
didn't look at anything like you did and Sean did, so.
So I put that forward as what I would hope would be an adequate review to protect, as we agreed we wanted to do, Jody, to ensure that it didn't appear that her work was unreviewed and could leave her open to being questioned related to the pay study. So I put that forward as what myself and Sean and Joel have all felt was an adequate review, and would like us to consider that to move forward those pay tables and get back onto track with getting the non-represented the executive, et cetera, their adjustments and raises, and being able to put that study kind of in the rearview mirror so that we can get on to the next phase. So my request for this is, I'd love to have a conversation, but my ultimate request is to bring those pay tables back to the BOC for approval and to move forward utilizing the results of the study for those who have not yet had that opportunity, which is the non-reps executive and elected.
Thank you.
My turn?
Sure.
Okay. So I will say for the record, I did read this earlier this morning. I also had a very brief conversation with Commissioner Scar and also with Sean separately. And I've looked at this in some detail, and I'm pretty familiar with how this works, having been on the compensation committee for a long time. And I guess where I come down on this sort of thing, I would like to leave the names out of it. I don't want to personalize this at all as to our HR individual or others when in similar situation. To me, this is about positions, not individuals. And so you look at the position, and then the question is, was there the possibility that that position was misjudged or misallocated or measured against improper criteria or selective criteria? And you can draw your conclusions of since the person was doing it. So I think we took an absolutely necessary and reasonable step to pull it off and say, okay, let's have a look at how we did this, and in fact, let's audit the auditor, or let's look at the process. Again, not the individual, and I don't want to focus on names, at least for my part. So we now have audited the auditor, and I'm not sure where that ends. If you're unhappy with this, then you go opinion shopping, in my judgment, and I don't think that's the proper thing for this board to do or for this organization to do. I think we say, okay, we have done what is reasonable, what is prudent, what is thoughtful, and what is done elsewhere. We're not reinventing the wheel. This is done in organizations everywhere in one form or another. I think this document and others that we've had are reasonable. I also believe that there are no two comparable positions. They're close, but they're not. Because every county, as we're fond of saying, you've seen one county, they're all a little bit different. And even though the positions are maybe 85 or 90%, there are still variables. So I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect comparable. So having said that, I'm pretty comfortable that the three people who looked at it, two of whom are in the room and the third is here by proxy, I guess, our other
He's
council.
available by telephone if they needed him to, I'm sure.
Okay, well, but so we had three senior people, two of whom are elected and one is appointed. Smart people, and I don't think, I may be wrong, I don't think any has any skin in the game other than to do the right thing. I don't think there's a person in this room that has an agenda or that is not what is best for Tillamook County and the people who are employed by Tillamook County. I also would, and I might have be a teeny bit more skeptical if this were a one-time thing and we weren't going to do it again for 7 years or some period of time. But my understanding is this comes up roughly every 18 months. And therefore, if there is a flaw, and there may be, it can be corrected in a reasonably short period of time, which is not to say there wouldn't be some equities. I don't see this as perfect, but I would say for my part, it's at least reasonable and standard, and nothing I've ever seen in my years of doing or being around this stuff that is unusual or tainted or otherwise doesn't have a measure of integrity with it. So I think we say that we're done, this works, let's institute it. Let's don't name names and personalize it. Let's put it into our pay schedule, and then let's prepare to do the next one again. And if there are inequities and things change, that can be dealt with case by case. But at some point, you got to draw the line and say, okay, we're in the 9th inning now. There'll be another game tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate your sports analogies. Thank you. I appreciate the work that everybody did looking at this. I think it's fine. Those of us who participated in multiple HR director recruitments, failed recruitments, already knew that the position is under market. And in fact, in at least the last recruitment, but I think the last couple recruitments, we couldn't get anybody because nobody was willing to work for what we had to offer, or they didn't want to move here, or both. So there's, in my mind, that was never in question. But what came up is the question of who reviewed the HR director's work. And so now you have, Sean has, Joel has, and I think that's a fair question. I don't think any of us should be recommending our own raise. So I appreciate that there have been 3 sets of eyes on this. It's a little, I guess I'd like an explanation about why it wasn't possible to do it externally, because you suggested we could send it to Trupp. Jody suggested we could send it to Jenny Marsden, and so I'm wondering why we didn't do any of those.
Time and money. It was going to take a month before anybody had time to review it. And given that, it just didn't seem that was going to make a significant difference. And we do have not only this position, but we have everyone who is not union currently waiting for these pay tables to be adopted to move forward with adjustments and raises. And it just felt like what we would gain from the outside review wasn't worth the wait.
Maybe that's true. I'd like us to, moving forward with the next market study, to consider doing that in, earlier, so that we weren't pressed for time. And in terms of, so I'm fine with the HR director recommendation. In terms of the rest of them, Jody and I have met with a couple of departments. They had questions for her. She was going to research the answers. I don't know where we're at with that. I think you were going to meet with her with at least one department maybe. And so I don't know that the others are ready to go, but I feel comfortable and confident with the HR director numbers, and I think we in this meeting today, there have been several places where we don't have an established policy or procedure for how we do something, and I hope that everything moves so fast that it's hard to find the time to say, okay, before this comes around again, let's have a procedure that we follow. But I hope that we do. I hope that we're not just stumbling over ourselves next time.
So I do not have any departments that we need to meet with before we can move forward. So, and I know that Jody sent emails responding to both the DA and the sheriff, and I assume that you were copied on those. It's been in the last day, so you may not have had a chance to see them yet. So I would suggest that those answers have been given that were requested, and assuming that that is, that those are adequate, I would suggest we move forward so we can get everybody paid and get this onto the pay table, or onto the agenda next week.
Okay, so we'll check with those
Yeah.
with those leaders and see if we're at that point.
Perfect. And I think what we want to be clear is that being at that point doesn't. I have a department who disagrees. They think they should have higher wages, but the pay study is based on our methodology. And so that meeting is a description of methodology to make sure they understand why that is, and that we're not opening the study to bring in the private comparators and things that they would like us to bring in. So I would like to suggest and have a little conversation here that as we talk about this, as long as the methodology has been followed and is accurate for those departments, even if they don't like the answer, if the methodology is the one we've laid out, which is our comparators plus the two, are we comfortable as commissioners being able to say, we hear you? The next phase of this, which we've talked about at leadership and talked about as commissioners as well, is to do the next step, which is to really look at actual jobs that people do. Because we know that job descriptions, to your point about there not being time to do everything, job descriptions across every position have not been updated. They are not necessarily all 100% accurate. So it does create challenges for comparing in some of our spaces because the job description may not accurately represent what that person does. And the real goal is to, in the next 18 months, work with Troop and Jody's getting bids for this, which will show up in the budget, to have all of those reviewed with the people who do the work. So the equivalency of what we currently do with a desk audit for reclassification, to do that across the agency over the 18 months, to make sure, to Doug's point, in the next time we all show up on the baseball field ready to go, that we actually have all the information that we didn't have for this study to make sure that we're doing it. We have everybody lined up correctly. In the meantime, the reclassification process still exists if an employee and their director truly feel that they are doing a job that is not what their job description says, but they've had added duties, they've had added education, something that would move them to another classification. That is still open to anyone to ask for that desk audit and do that process. So it's not saying to people, you can't, but it's saying to people, for the purposes of the study, for the job descriptions that we had, and therefore the comparisons we were able to make, we need to close the door on that piece of it. And we're going to be moving forward in a full study going forward. But if you as an employee and your director both agree, your position is different now, that can be looked at.
Okay, so I understand all of that. I think it's fine and obvious. I mean, I think we have all agreed to all of that previously. So in the case of the sheriff's office and the DA's office, they felt like there were discrepancies, like there were errors in the market study that she agreed to investigate and report. So maybe she's
100%.
already done that.
She
Um,
has,
So,
yeah.
so I want us to correct errors before we move forward. If, obviously, if we're just talking about the philosophy and people don't like the philosophy, that's too bad. But the philosophy is what it is, the model is what it is. I just want us to correct our errors.
100%. And that you'll see in the emails where that is done and ready to move forward.
Okay.
So if you don't feel that when you read the emails, you'll feel there's more. There are one or two, I think, that came up as something that needed a correction. And I hate to hold everybody back. Those two can be corrected also.
Okay, well, more to be revealed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so pending that, can we place those on the agenda for next Wednesday? The table, pending your acknowledgement and everybody's happy that those problems are solved.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, if those leaders agree that's, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's right, the two leaders can hold up everybody else.
If there were
So
errors,
I'm
it's right. Yeah.
Just putting my opinion out, I don't think it's right that two other electeds can hold up everybody else in the county.
If there are errors, it's right.
I'm-
I mean, I think we all know through this process that errors have been made and, to err is human. And if it's our responsibility to correct them to the extent that we can. So I don't feel like there's, like, if people are concerned that we've made errors, it's our responsibility to look at that and respond. So.
And I don't disagree. We're
Yeah.
talking about one or two positions, so I think the other thing is to move it forward, knowing that those one or two positions may still require an additional adjustment and our acknowledgement to make that if that needs to happen. But again, holding back everybody else, because
Well, if
that's
it
my
were one or
struggle.
two, though, why wouldn't we just make the adjustment?
And I believe that we are. I
Okay.
think, but to Sean's point, I think if there is this dialogue that goes back and forth, we are holding up the rest of the employees over something that is in a problem-solving mode. So,
Well, I think we're at, as we said, we're at about the 99th percentile here, and there's this 1%, a stumbling block of maybe two individuals, both of whom are elected, or I guess they're advocating for people on their staff, not necessarily them.
correct.
As I understand it.
Yep.
And I appreciate that because I think part of the role of a leader, a department head, is to be a fierce advocate for his or her staff. And I think they are, and that's all well and good. But at some point, you draw the line and move forward and then go back and correct it. And if either of those two individuals could come back, let's say in 30 days and say, you guys blew it, I want this reevaluated, then you go back into the system. And as I understand it, the mechanism is still there to go back and reclassify or make some adjustments as necessary rolling forward, even if it's 2 months from now. And it can always be retroactive. Now, that may not be, you don't take the retroactive to Fred Meyer and cash it, but nonetheless, it tries to even out. And, this is sort of, in my mind, the greater good, where if we're at the 95 or 99 percentile, that's not bad. And this is, there's quite a number of people that are counting on this to be done and done correctly and be done timely. And I think we've kicked around now long enough that it's time to say we're done and then have the mechanism for the others to come back and say, look, you guys blew it on this one and here's why. I also have a bit of concern now, having visited with Jody on several occasions, that I think, if you correct me if I'm wrong, there's only about FTE, 3.5 or 4 FTE in that office.
3.
3. These people are spread pretty thin, in my judgment.
They
Really,
also have a
really thin.
contractor, but yes, they are
Yeah,
spread
okay.
thin, for sure.
And I mean, they're recruiting and they're going through like the parks and lots of others. I mean, I don't know exactly what the turnover is, but it's substantial. And so I want people to recognize if you ask for this on Monday, you're not going to get it by Tuesday noon.
Mhm.
So that, I'm ready to take it to the next level, whatever it needs to be. And I think that would be bringing it back on next week from today and get this done and get the math done and get people on the schedule.
Yeah, so I will be happy to talk to the sheriff and the DA and we have, and potentially get it on the agenda on Friday.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for the conversation, everybody.
If I could just remind
Please.
everybody, the deadline is 10 a.m. on Friday.
Thank you. Thank you.
This looks like it may be one that comes in later with confusion.
Okay.
That could get to Debbie, you're welcome.
Hey Denise.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I just wanted to tag on to this. I'm obviously not one of the elected officials that was being discussed, but I still have not seen anything. So, I mean, I understand there's a philosophy, and all that I have seen is the screenshot that was taken when the original compensation study was presented by HR Annie. So I would like to see the information because I did see that there were errors in the calculations when they were first put up to go before the board, and but that was something that was public information. I haven't seen any of the information that was used for my staff.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
I didn't realize that you hadn't.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll ask Jody to send it to you. I assumed at this point that all the department directors or electeds had seen their own market studies.
Jody, I know you're with us. I know you're at CIS at the same time.
Bear with me here. What we did is we asked at the leadership team if there was some concerns about their study to reach out to their liaison, and we were going to schedule meetings. So I did not hear that that was something that Denise would like to have. If the direction is to send I think there's about 175 pages. So if the direction is to send all 175 pages to all leadership team, I'm happy to do that. Denise, we didn't realize that you wanted to have a conversation with the liaison about that study. So that is why you haven't seen it yet.
So, and I would like to suggest that we have gotten pay tables that are either published or have gotten from HR for each of the positions. And I reviewed all of those for one position. And I probably have 35 tabs open on my computer for that. To ask HR to go back for every department, provide every comparable when that is data entry, I'm suggesting that's too much to ask. I think it is appropriate for everyone to get the pages that actually show the outcome. So the one pager for the positions. So Jody, is it possible to send each department a report that just has the one pager for their positions that shows the total comp comparison, as opposed to having to do all of those pay tables? Because I think that actually is busy work that we don't have the staff to do.
So what we would need to do is PDF each department's individual job classifications and send them, or it's just as easy to send the entire page, but it is 200 pages by the time you look at every classification within the county.
Okay. So
And
let's.
you can't break them out one department at a time?
If I took another 3 days to do it, yes.
Because it's by classification, not by department. And a lot of
Correct.
departments have classifications exist in more than one department. So it seems that it
Right.
might be easier this is all public information, it might be easier to send it out that give these comparator pages. And I think what we want directors and anyone listening to understand is that everything that's behind that is data entry. And so pay tables, we have them. It's not that we don't have them. It is a lot of work to sort them all through and give everybody the 15 or 13 or 15 pay tables. And that's just not, if we want to continue to get employees hired and all of the other work of HR done, if we continue to struggle through this of everybody wanting every backup piece of it, we're not going to get there. What I would suggest is, I know that Jody sat down and presented to the DA and the sheriff at their request, Denise, if you would like Jody to set a meeting with you to sit down and present to you, that is a great way to do it and to focus in on what's in your department. Alternately, Jody, we can send the report so people can look at it, but in sending it so people can look at it, I still want to be clear that it doesn't mean that we are reopening it and that people can challenge comparators. Because that's the philosophical piece, that we can't have everybody challenging comparators, or this would be the only thing HR would do for the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I don't want to take up any more of your time. I thought we had that understanding that there was going to be a meeting, because I think I've said this multiple times now that I haven't seen any of it. And like I said, all I have is a screen print that I got off a public meeting. So yeah, I would love to see. I'll take the whole thing. I could just my job descriptions are pretty specific to my office. So whatever I can see would be great. And I just want to go back at that one page I did see on a screen print was, I think Tassie and I both noticed it, that, we were compared to the Hood River County. And I mean, it was like a third of what that position paid. So I just, I like to verify numbers also. All right, thanks. Thanks, Jody.
Denise. So Jody, you
So-
reach out to Denise and see if she wants it. You two can set a meeting and do a presentation like you've done with others who've requested it.
Yeah, I think the part that's really critical in trying to get familiar with the data is we use 7/1 of 2023 and what the effective date of the salary is and why it was so key to save all the salary tables. Some jurisdictions were in bargaining. They didn't have their number. They were mid-compensation study. So we received projections for those jurisdictions. There are jurisdictions who finished a comp study. They went from 6 ranges to 13. They didn't finalize that until October or later in the year. So if you go to their pay plan today, it will have the new date, but we used a point in time. We did save all of the emails where we got the projections from the HR departments. And also, just because a department or an organization doesn't have a pay plan on their website doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We did reach out and contact all of our jurisdictions, and we did get pay plans. So we have backup data for where those numbers came from. So what I just described is 85% of the conversations we're having with department leaders. And so I just want to make sure that as we go through this, I'm going to say not trying to reconcile to a current point in time pay plan that might be on a jurisdiction's website.
Thank you, Jody.
But Denise, I will get that to you and we can talk through that if you'd like to schedule a meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
And Jody, the document that you sent to the DA and to the sheriff, is that something you could just send to the other department heads? Because I had assumed that at this point that all the department heads had seen their market studies, but I'm gathering from Denise that they have not.
They have not. We discussed if there was concerns about the market study to reach out to their liaison. And so when those requests came in, we did send the market data and scheduled those meetings. I will, following this meeting, send this out to all of our leadership team with our compensation philosophy. And I'll let them know to please contact their liaison if they have any questions. I'm happy to try to field this, but we're really looking at, is there an error? And we want to make sure that we correct those errors. I absolutely agree. But there is a lot of very well-meaning folks trying to reconcile to another jurisdiction's current pay plan. And I'm doing my best to address those along with the rest of the HR workload. We've got a lot of key projects, so I want to be thoughtful about how we're discussing this and at what level. Absolutely, let's correct the errors. But I feel like I'm continuing to defend our compensation philosophy, and we want to work through what those different discussions are and how to collaborate and work together to make a better process in the future. This study was not perfect, but it was the first comp study we were able to land countywide in as many years as I'm aware. So yes, it is imperfect. We have a lot of lessons and takeaways from what we have done. Today's conversation is a great example. But I really hope we can lean in and work together and collaborate to make this a better project moving forward. There was one of my predecessors who started this project. We couldn't even finish the project and the consultant wouldn't work with us any longer. So I want to be thoughtful about how we lean in and try to do even better this next round. So I'll get that out to all of the leaders and try to address through capacity as quickly as I can their concerns.
I appreciate that, and what it's reminding me of is something that Terry Moore and the Portland State consultants told us in our assessment, which is that one of the ways that as an organization, not just your office, but all of us as an organization, one of the ways that we could that make a lot of improvement is in communication, and I think it's really true. And in every leadership position I've ever been in, if I tried harder at communication, I would have been more successful. So that's the situation that's the lesson that I hear bubbling out of this, is that more communication, because of course, department directors and elected officials are going to want to know what the data is. Of course, they're going to want to see their own numbers for their department and have the conversation about how did this, how do we come up with this, and what does it mean? So it's, yeah, so let's just send them all the data right now, because it's going to take longer if people come back, if departments come back one at a time and say, well, wait a second, I haven't seen that either.
Yeah, just for point of reference, I would like to let you know that I've conducted over 20 organization-wide compensation studies of this nature. Giving the full spreadsheets to the entire organization for review has never been a practice. Again, we want to be thoughtful. We want to be careful that we haven't made a mistake. But that level of collaboration is not a common practice. I'm not saying that we won't do it here, but I have not ever seen that in any other organization that I have worked in. But again, we'll get that out today. We'll hope everyone will let us know if there's any further concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Appreciate it. Back to your CIS conference.
Thank you.
And ultimately, I don't know if everybody wants to see everybody else's department or not. They may not look at it at all, but it's a public document. It's public record, and definitely they're going to be interested in their own. So if it were possible to split them out and just send Rachel her departments, I think that would be fine. But I heard Jody say it was going to take her 3 days to do that.
Capacity is the problem.
Yeah,
the capacity is the problem. So.
Okay.
Why couldn't you put up the entire set of documents online, and then people can go in at their leisure and read through it? Is that not?
Put it on the intranet?
Yeah.
So that it's just.
Is that not possible, or?
Good question.
Seems like that, as you say, it's a public document. Put it up, anybody wants to look at it, be our guest.
Yeah, I don't know why she decided to email them instead. I don't know. Good question. Okay, what else?
What else? I am out of the office on Friday, back on Monday. Rachel, you're out of the office Friday and Monday.
Well, I have a few questions when you're.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, one, last night I sent out a whole bunch of Tillamook Lightwave historical documents, and I didn't send them to you, Commissioner, because you were not on one of the voting, but you certainly were at the meeting, and these have to do, as you remember, in forming some more and better information to send on to the college. So would you like to have a couple of 100 pages to go through, or would you like to wait for the second edition, or?
Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
Honestly, I probably would not read all 200 pages, so I can wait for the Cliff
Oh,
Notes edition.
okay, well, we'll have something in draft form here before too long, but like we said yesterday, it might be another, well, it might be, let's see, the April meeting then at the college when they have something to talk about.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good.
That's one, thank you. The closure of the Gowanda parking lot and the whole project will be one of the featured discussions at our chamber meeting next week, and I'll answer questions and I'll keep with Rachel. I have all the press release, and we discussed it at a meeting yesterday, and you know, it is kind of a big deal for the merchants and others, and the anxiety level has gone up some. So if you've got any other bright ideas on things, I'd appreciate it, but
No, I might know a little more tomorrow. I told you about the maps that I received, and we have our
Yes.
construction meeting tomorrow that
okay,
I'm planning to walk through. So if I have anything, any new information, I will give that to you by tomorrow.
okay,
Because I'm off Friday and Monday, and I'm not gonna be thinking about it when I get back on
Yeah.
Tuesday morning. So
okay.
if I have any, I'll give
Thank
it to you.
So last week, or maybe it was a week before here, I'm losing track of time, but I went to the annual Salmon Superhighway meeting. And I had started with that group at the request of Mark Labhart, Commissioner Labhart, I don't know, 10 years ago, when I got, well, I didn't have time to keep going, so I stepped back. But in the meantime, they've been going and they're going full bore. And so I invited them. They just for context, they have rebuilt in excess of 50, and you may already know this because I know they've been before the board sometime back, but they've rebuilt more than 50 culverts to modern specifications, working specifications for fish passage, and they have a real story to tell. And so I invited her to, why don't you come and update the board? And they said she'd love to do that and bring along some slides and pictures and so on. And then she sent me an email this morning, could we schedule that sooner than later? So how far out can we make that one of the featured presentations, or exactly how do I?
Presentation scheduled with Debbie.
Okay, so
She's in
just set up
charge of the-
something, and
Yeah.
it looks like we'd limit, maybe not limit, but ordinarily have one per meeting so that we don't spend hours and hours.
Yeah.
And okay, well, I'll set up something then and notify her, and so that.
Great.
Thank you, that will be coming along, and, let's see, everybody may know this, but I understand that the, Joint Resolution 201 that wanted to put in a statewide property tax is now dead.
Yay, I didn't hear that, so that's awesome.
Not, no,
No,
thank you.
it's evidently didn't meet some certain timelines or pass out of committee, and so I guess they can say, well, they introduced it and they got some people's attention, like all of us and others, and I heard that some other groups, the fire group, for example, I talked to Chief Ader, and they have a statewide fire group, and they were watching this very closely, and for the same concerns that we had, if the state got into the property tax business, that would be a major game changer in the state of Oregon. And so they were looking at it because they fund capital needs, and in some cases operating serial levies and so on, and you get property taxes at the state level, that changes the whole character of how we fund government. So, but it appears to be dead in this session, and of course, things sometimes rise from the dead, in the last few days, so.
Get tagged onto another bill somewhere.
Yes, they do.
It didn't die.
And also then the recreational immunity, that's what I've heard on that, and I guess I'm asking if anybody's heard any more. I know that it was moving forward with a temporary fix, like 18 months, and the next session, the longer session, would take it up. But then the trial lawyers group showed up, no offense to the lawyer in the room,
Not a
but
trial.
they, try now.
I have tried cases, but I don't belong to that.
Okay, well, they showed up with their powerful lobby and submitted a testimony, and so that may have changed things, but I don't know that, but maybe, just inquiring if anybody has heard.
I had heard
More.
it passed out of committee with 2 nay votes, but it had enough to pass out of committee. So I heard that the trial lawyers did not shut it down,
Yeah.
that they were
Good.
not successful.
Good, I hadn't
So
heard that yet.
fingers crossed that
Yeah.
it moves,
Yeah.
continues to move. There's still opportunities, obviously, for them to do so, but
Yeah.
that at least got out of committee was what I heard.
That's so outrageous, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
I was just rolling my eyes when I heard that.
Well, it's one of those things that, only a lawyer can appreciate. And, the lady who was injured, I mean, it was a genuine injury, and she did what a lot of people would do, is look for some relief somewhere. But there are good reasons, my opinion, in matters of public policy, where if you walk, particularly not just the cities and counties, but, an awful lot of people in the state cross private property to go hunting or fishing, and they do that with the permission of the owner. And if I were an owner and said, well, you've been hunting here for years, I'm putting up a no trespassing sign because I don't want to be sued. I mean, this has implications all across Oregon, and it needs a fix, and it needs it quickly. So that's my take on it as well, Commissioner. I think there needs to be something. I think the legislature recognizes that. It's
Yeah.
just, and so the last thing I'll mention, just I know there are some candidates for public office in the organization, the county, as well as others. There will be a candidate forum on April 2nd.
April 2nd.
Oh,
April
oh,
2nd in
that's
Pacific
quick, isn't
City,
it?
like some of you, I think you've both been there before, and others, and I know we've got a couple of employees running for a position now in A&T.
Yeah.
And then unopposed, I think, our county clerk and a few others. And so they'll all be invited to, a 2-hour luncheon thing, stand up and make their pitch like they've done before. And from my viewpoint, that's grassroots government at its best, is you sit there and shake hands and people try to pin you to the wall and you do what it is. And so every few years this comes along, and so it's on the schedule. So I'll just, maybe others tuning in, like Denise, I know 2 of her staff have filed. So, they'll all be invited formally after the closing date, which is, I believe, March 12th.
And say again, April when?
April 2, that's the first Tuesday in April, and it'll be at the Kiwanda Community Center. And we'll probably now, with the new equipment, be able to stream it live. So maybe, there could be a sizable audience that's not in the building even, so.
Is that during the chamber lunch or is
Yes.
that evening?
No, that's gonna be that luncheon. We talked about the evening, but that requires more logistics, and also we'll just go from like noon to 1:30 or 2 or whenever we get done. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Great.
Oh, one other I do have. I've had a number of citizens talk to me or ask me if I would meet with them to discuss short-term rentals. And I've read the ordinance. I even printed it out and put it in a binder so easy access. But I'm certainly not as familiar as you, who went through the whole process over 2 years and got pinned to the wall and battered about the head and shoulders. I understand that. And these people, so I will meet with them, but I'm gonna do more listening. I don't want to commit to anything because I don't know some of the others. I have visited with Sarah, and Sarah came down to a meeting in the south not too long ago, and the room was filled. There were actually like 60, 70 people there and another 35 or 40 online. And the issue was short-term rentals, and should Pacific City, in this case, be divided at the river? I mean, there's still, to me, I guess it's still an open question, but maybe one of you or Sarah could give me a 2-minute or a 10-minute primer on where that stands and what might be over in the next year possible to do.
Specific to Pacific City or
No,
just the
probably
ordinance
overall.
overall?
These people, I got one today now from Nehalem area, someone I've known for a number of years, and wanted to catch up and visit about that subject, so, don't know.
I had a great conversation with Sarah about it. Now time just all flows together, but I think it was earlier this week.
Recently.
Like in the last
It's
couple
only
days.
Wednesday.
I don't always say recently.
Yeah,
Giving up
what
on
I
the date.
remember vividly is that I was walking in the rain. So I was walking in the rain talking to Sarah, and she updated me on what she's doing in terms of the community citizen advisory groups in the communities that after we did the ordinance revision, we said that Sarah in the next couple of years would go back and work with the community advisory groups to see if there's the desire and if it's reasonable to adjust their cap for their community. And I know Pacific City is interested in that. They're interested in whether I think it's Quanda Shores, like whether certain communities should be excluded from that or should have higher caps or whatever. So here's Sarah, and we had a great conversation about it, and we also had a great conversation about people, now that their renewals are coming up, when we voted in the ordinance revisions, there were new guidelines, and then the renewals are happening now. So people, when they're going to renew their license, there are new standards that they have to meet or show or whatever. And so there are some owners who are anxious about that. So I'm getting a lot of that kind of communication, people who are worried about it. And Sarah assured me that a lot of those are going through smoothly, that people have more anxiety than is warranted. And once they go through it, they're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. So Sarah, do you want to elaborate on that?
So by the way, Sarah did her usual outstanding job at that meeting, and she didn't get beat to a pulp. But there were people who were obviously there for that subject, and this, as you well know, I'm not telling anything you don't know, but the intensity in the room is far above the normal conversation about other things. This is very personal.
People are mad.
They're
They're mad about all kinds of things.
They certainly are. Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
To you, Sarah.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Hi, it's nice to see you all, and thank you all for the kind words. Oh, happy to do so. Yeah, okay, so the CAP update with the communities. So I'll start with the easy ones first. I meet monthly with city managers, and I am, as you know, many of our cities are in process of either updating or creating their own short-term rental programs. They are aware of the caps that we have set for their urban growth boundary sub-areas. My approach is going to be to work with the cities and their residents to reevaluate the caps for each of the urban growth boundaries. And then depending on how they feel about the caps for their UGBs, I will be back and fold in those recommendations to you in a presentation for an adjustment to their caps. The cities are interesting because some of them do look at their UGBs as where their most valuable housing stock is for residents and renters. This morning we had that great presentation that Parker did. So I'm trying to balance the needs and the desires of the short-term rental industry and use with also the longer-term housing needs that we recognize really become very valuable in those urban growth boundaries. So more to come, but as they work through their own city processes, I am following that, and we are talking about that monthly. And so when the time is right, I will be back to share more with you about the UGBs. And then as far as the cities, I've met with Neoconi, Pacific City. I have a meeting coming up with Oceanside, and my meeting for Nescoin was canceled because of the weather. So our meeting is coming up on the 19th of March. And then my hope is to join the Tierra del Mar Community Association for their community meeting over Memorial Day weekend. And Isabel, who serves as the president of that association, and I are talking about that. Doug, thank you. Yes, that was a good meeting. It was a good discussion in Pacific City Woods. I was a little nervous walking into that, to be honest with you, in having those community conversations about the CAP. We're having a lot of folks from Oregon Coast hosts join us at those meetings just to talk about the program in general. And so, working with the community as a whole to find space for everybody to be there and share their opinions, ask their questions, and participate in the conversation about the caps. Neoconi wants to lower their cap. I am waiting for some GIS support so I can run some better numbers for them to answer some of their questions. They might be a phased approach of perhaps lowering their cap to reflect what Manzanita has. Even though they are their own community, they do definitely feel a connection to the city of Manzanita. And, nobody knows where that magic line is between the two, really, I think, unless you live in Neoconi. So working with them, that might be the first step, is to recommend that their cap be adjusted to reflect what the city of Manzanita currently has. Pacific City, as Doug mentioned, and Commissioner Bell, we have those unique HOA managed, clearly defined developments within the Pacific City Woods community that are west of the river. They were intentionally developed for vacation destination, stays. So My homework with them is to look at if I pull out some of those developments that are managed by HOAs, that are defined by a clear boundary, what would those numbers look like? So I'm working on that. Oceanside, I think, is going to want to take a little bit of a different approach. Nescowan, we did all receive a letter from one of their community groups that actually felt like the county did a good job in our work of addressing community livability issues through the updated regulations. And the proposal that will be going before the Nescowan community will be to actually take a wait and see approach. Give it a year or so to see how these updated program changes play out, and because they feel that maybe their community is okay. That is one subset of Nescowan that I have heard from. I will know more on the 19th when I meet with the community as a whole. And then getting ready to also prepare to enter into that conversation with Tierra Del Mar. A couple of the things that Chair Bell and I visited about, Commissioner Olson, you and I talked about this, and Commissioner Scar, you and I visited about this as well, is when we have those unique situations where we have either areas like Kiwanda Shores or the condominiums in Nescowan, they still need licenses, but there is a conversation of should they be removed from the cap limit, just given the nature and really the purpose behind their developments as a whole. They would still require a license, but I am having that conversation with communities about, you know, if we do an adjustment, should or shouldn't they be limited by the cap. Likewise, I have communities who have subdivisions where perhaps they only allow a very small period of time to rent or don't allow rentals at all, period. I have consulted with each one of you individually, Mr. Kearns and Bill Sargent, and where we have landed is that if those developments allow any rental activity at all, they would not be removed from the cap formula. If I get, like, I'll use Terracea and Oceanside, which in their CCNRs, it's my understanding, they explicitly say no transient lodging, no vacation rental, none of those uses are allowed within their development. With that documentation, I could remove them from the formula to readjust the ratio of what that short-term rental activity actually looks like in relation to a cap in their communities. So that is the message that I am bringing forward. If you have a subdivision that allows rental activity at all, even if it's only 30 days a year, you still need a license. Your properties are still included in the cap formula. If you don't allow rental activities whatsoever at all, then we can talk about removing them from the formula. And the reason why that conversation is important to communities is because some feel like it's diluting numbers of caps and it's pushing rental activity in certain areas of a community because other areas there's things to discourage it. In our efforts to be fair and equitable, but also working with the tools and resources that we have in the department. These are the approaches that we are taking. So one cap, 1%, if I can mathematically adjust the formula in a way that's transparent and easy to manage, that's something that we are looking at. But if a development allows rental activity at all, they need a license. Therefore, those properties, that development will remain in the cap formula. So I hope that all makes sense. That's a pretty big message for me to carry. If any of you have any questions or changed your mind about that, please let me know before my Oceanside meeting, because I think with the Capes, as you know, this is going to be a focal point of the conversation.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
like-
then with the renewals.
It's just like going to the dentist and say, don't bother with the Novocaine or the lidocaine, just let them go at it, and they do. So, you know, it's, as you well know, it's just extremely emotional and personal to so many people, and this lady up here is doing a pretty darn good job.
I agree. I agree.
Sat
you.
any of those meetings with her, it's like, holy moly, she does such an amazing job of staying calm, cool, and collected and having people feel heard. So good job, Sarah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. My pleasure. And we are getting a lot of renewals in. We're trying to be proactive. If you get those calls and those concerns, I would love to visit with those people. Commissioner Olson is right. People are coming in and going, Charbel, it's not so bad. And I'm like, no, it's really not. Come visit with me. And, you know, for property files, especially for homes that were built in the last 10, 15 years, we've got those site plans on file. We have a lot of those floor plans on file. The assessor's office has some great information available. We are pulling our resources together to help them compile that information, and we are happy to do that. This is the big year, the renewal. We are trying to do a lot of this work through a desk audit and a paper audit so that our license holders don't have to pay for extra inspections or do extra work with our staff outside of us, helping them collecting that paperwork at the time of their renewal and then reviewing it. We have solid records moving forward. This is a one-time thing unless they decide to remodel their house or do an alteration or something that could change their parking or change their number of bedrooms to where we would need that information again. So if we can get everybody to hang on this year and get this pushed on, we're going to be in a lot better place at the end of 2024. And I really appreciate your support. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a long answer, but a very good one. It's just,
Good.
yes, thank you. And I'll talk to these people, but I'm basically gonna kick them over to Sarah.
Perfect.
And since she knows and she's so good with people, and it's just, you know, you're probably getting inquiries as well. And
For
I
sure.
think maybe some have come to me thinking that you two are a lost cause and they can work with me.
I would
Very
say that's
likely.
probably true.
Very likely.
That's probably true. They watched us vote.
Yeah. Okay. Is that your whole list?
That's my list, thank
Okay.
you.
You get anything else?
I don't have anything else. I have 4 o'clock, so I'm just clock watching on my way out the door here.
Okay. So I have one question for Sean. Sean, I've heard from a couple of our new budget committee members that they're wondering what our budget committee onboarding process is, if they're going to, when they're going to be hearing from us, how they're going to learn about their responsibilities, et cetera. So I said I'd ask you.
So it's my goal to have something sent out to them by the end of this week.
Great.
Like I said, there were other projects
Oh,
that
yeah.
have been getting in the middle of everything.
For sure.
So that's my goal, is to have something out to them.
Awesome.
And then are we gonna do kind of a mid-year review / training with them? Is that the plan? Get that done before sometime in March, since we have budget hearings in April.
I'll
Great.
probably steal a Wednesday afternoon for
Yeah.
like an hour.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Rachel? Bill?
Nope, but if I had a couple of times I was gonna chime in, but
Sorry.
I chimed in enough today. Thank you for asking, Rick.
You're welcome. So, nothing else? Anybody online? For the good of the order?
I do have one more thing.
Sure.
I'm getting ready to bring forward the county's hazard mitigation plan updates to you for adoption. So I will be working with Debbie and Rachel and the online submittal system for that. We are doing that in tandem with the cities. I'll ask Randy and Chris to be a part of that presentation. It should not be a long one, but we are on the home stretch to update and adopt that 5-year document. So
Awesome.
just want to let you know it's on its way.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, good to see you.
So the soil nail wall is looking really good. That's Sand Lake slide. We are actually looking at potentially opening up, depending on what's happening right now, prior to the 3rd week in March.
Wow,
So
that's great.
possibly sooner, but I feel comfortable saying the 3rd week in March.
Well done.
Excellent.
That's exciting.
Boy,
That's my update.
Really good.
That's
news.
a good update. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Save me a half hour a day.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Anything else? If not, we will adjourn this meeting at 3:48 PM. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Rachel, I hope you have an amazing trip.
Where are you going?
My sister lives in Wisconsin, her, she